Never attack a Deathworlder hospital ship, HFY Sci-Fi stories. The galaxy was vast, and it was filled with many wonders and terrors. Most civilizations in the known universe had learned to respect the Deathworlders. Their reputation alone made them a species few dared to provoke. But that didn't stop some factions from testing the waters. And for one particular hospital ship, that would prove to be a fatal mistake. The Phoenix's Requiem was a medical vessel like no other. Its primary purpose, to offer aid and rescue to any species, regardless of their origins, in times of need. Built and run by the Deathworlders of Earth, it was as much a symbol of their advanced technologies as it was a testament to their resilience. While their military vessels were feared across the galaxy, the Phoenix's Requiem was a floating beacon of hope, carrying with it cutting-edge medical technology, expert doctors, and the unyielding will to save life, even in the most hostile environments. But not everyone saw the hospital ship as a symbol of peace. The Carzian Dominion was an aggressive empire that had recently begun expanding into the fringes of known space. Their rulers, paranoid and territorial, viewed anything beyond their borders as a threat. When a Carzian scout ship picked up signals from the Phoenix's Requiem, they didn't see a benevolent force, they saw an opportunity to strike at the heart of the Deathworlders' might. A plan was quickly set in motion: ambush the hospital ship, capture its crew, and seize its medical technology. The Dominion's fleet was sent to intercept, and their forces were preparing for a swift and decisive attack. The Phoenix's Requiem, unarmed and purely humanitarian, wouldn't stand a chance, or so they thought. Captain Tara Reynolds stood at the helm of the Phoenix's Requiem, her fingers hovering over the controls. The ship was equipped with advanced stealth technology, allowing it to slip through hostile sectors without being detected. She had been briefed about the potential Carzian threat, but she hadn't expected them to engage so soon. "Dr. Lee, how's the status of the patients?" Tara asked calmly. Dr. Mei Lee, the head surgeon aboard the ship, gave a quick nod. "The patients are stable. We've just completed the final round of treatments for the Thraxian refugees. We're preparing to depart the system within the hour." Tara's eyes narrowed. The refugees they had helped were already on their way home, but the Carzians would be looking for any excuse to strike. She turned to the communications officer. "Ensign, scan for any incoming ships. I want a full sweep." A tense silence filled the bridge as the officer worked quickly, the hum of the ship's systems providing the only sound. "Captain, I've detected multiple ships entering our sector. It looks like a Carzian battle group." Tara's heart skipped a beat. They were too close to avoid. With a deep breath, she made the decision: initiate evasive maneuvers, full stealth mode, get us out of here. As the crew scrambled into action, Tara couldn't help but think of the unspoken truth that hovered over their mission: Deathworlders were not to be trifled with. The Carzian fleet, a brutal force designed to intimidate and crush, was confident in its superiority. But as they approached the Phoenix's Requiem, they began to notice something strange. The hospital ship had vanished from their scanners. No blip, no trace. It was as if it had simply dissolved into the vastness of space. "Where is it?" the Carzian commander growled, furiously tapping on his console. "Sir, we can't locate the target. It's as if it's gone." "Impossible. We know it's here. Find it." As they searched frantically, they failed to notice the subtle signs of the Phoenix's Requiem's return. Its stealth field had a unique, almost imperceptible distortion, a distortion only a Deathworlder would be able to exploit. Captain Tara Reynolds stood in the command center of her ship, fingers gripping the edge of the console. Now, the Phoenix's Requiem had been waiting, cloaked in the shadows of a nearby asteroid belt. Tara had given the order to remain hidden, but she had also given the order to arm their defensive systems. Suddenly, the Carzian fleet was lit up by blinding flashes of light. Energy pulses crackled across the void as the Phoenix's Requiem unleashed its unexpected counterattack. The first wave of Carzian ships was caught entirely off guard. Shielding systems overloaded, hulls cracked under the pressure of a barrage of nanite-infused projectiles. These weren't typical Deathworlder weapons. These were custom-designed for defense, non-lethal but devastating enough to cripple any ship within seconds. The Carzian commander's eyes widened in disbelief. "What in the galaxy are they?" His words were cut off by the sudden activation of a devastating EMP pulse, rendering the remaining Carzian ships useless. The fleet had been disabled. But Terra wasn't done. "Activate the medpods," she ordered. A strange, almost eerie calm descended upon the Phoenix's requiem as hundreds of medical pods hummed to life. From their seemingly peaceful exterior, the Deathworlders had transformed their hospital ship into a weapon of mercy. The disabled Carzian ships began receiving automated messages, followed by medical drones delivering supplies. Life-saving treatments, powered by the ship's advanced technologies, were delivered to the crew. Despite their initial attack, Terra's crew would leave no Carzian to die in space, not while they had the resources to help. Hours later, the Carzian commander, his ship still on the verge of total destruction, was forced to send a message of surrender. The Phoenix's requiem had proven its might, not through annihilation, but through sheer force of will and intellect. "Commander, the Deathworlders, they've saved us. All of us," a surviving officer said in disbelief. "They could have destroyed us. Instead, they're helping us." The commander stared at the message from Captain Reynolds. "Never attack a Deathworlder hospital ship again. Understood?" The officer nodded gravely. "Understood, sir." As the Phoenix's requiem made its way toward the next system, Captain Tara Reynolds gazed out into the vastness of space. She knew one truth that no one in the galaxy could deny: the Deathworlders of Earth might have built their reputation on survival, but it was their compassion, their unwavering dedication to preserving life, that made them truly dangerous. And no one, not even the Carzian Dominion, would ever forget that lesson. The end. Never attack a Deathworlder hospital ship. HFY Sci-Fi Stories, Part 2. The Phoenix's requiem had become somewhat of a legend in the galaxy, not for its battles or victories, but for its acts of mercy. Its hospital rooms were filled with the injured from every corner of the universe, species both familiar and foreign, all seeking the aid that only the Deathworlders could provide. But while the galaxy was slowly realizing the depth of their power, not every faction had learned the lesson from the Carzian Dominion. Weeks had passed since the incident with the Carzian fleet, and Captain Tara Reynolds had hoped that the galaxy would remember the lesson of that day. But as she sat in her command chair, gazing out at the stars, her instincts told her they weren't done yet. "Captain, we're picking up a distress signal," Ensign Daniels reported, his voice tinged with urgency. "It's coming from the Gorgoth system, sounds like a civilian convoy, but they're being attacked by the Zakar tribe." Tara's brow furrowed. The Zakar tribe was a notorious pirate faction, known for raiding peaceful colonies and hauling off resources to fund their endless wars. They had little regard for life, only the strong mattered to them, and the weak were left to perish. "Plot a course," Tara said, her voice steady, but her hands tightened into fists. "We won't let them take another innocent life." The Phoenix's requiem arrived in the Gorgoth system just as the pirates made their move. A convoy of civilian freighters, clearly outmatched, was surrounded by a half-dozen Zakar ships. They were no match for the pirates' advanced weaponry, and the freighters had already begun to take heavy fire. "Prepare to deploy medpods and shield drones," Tara ordered. "We're not here for a fight, but we won't let them get away with this." The crew worked swiftly. Medical pods launched from the ship's hull, racing toward the beleaguered convoy, while shield drones began forming a protective barrier around the freighters. Tara's ship maintained its distance, keeping a careful eye on the Zakar pirates. "Captain, they've noticed us," Ensign Daniels said, alarm rising in his voice. "They're changing course, heading straight for us." "Let them," Tara said, her eyes narrowing. "We're not here to play their game. Let them come." The Zakar pirate ships, savage in their design, were a stark contrast to the Phoenix's requiem's sleek, medical architecture. As they closed in, their weapons fired, lighting up the dark vacuum of space with violent bursts of energy. Tara gave a silent order. The Phoenix's requiem had been built with Deathworlder ingenuity, and despite its outward appearance as a hospital ship, its defensive systems were not to be underestimated. The pirates' first wave of fire hit nothing but the empty void, as Tara's ship expertly maneuvered, dancing between the enemy's blasts like a shadow in the night. But it was the counterattack that left the pirates in stunned silence. Rather than unleash deadly weapons, the Phoenix's requiem sent out a burst of focused electromagnetic energy, locking onto the systems of the Zakar ships. In mere moments, their weapons systems, engines, and communication arrays went dark. The pirates were paralyzed. their ships floating like helpless prey. Now, send the message, Terra ordered coldly. The Phoenix's Requiem sent out a transmission to the Zakar fleet, not a warning, but a demand. Turn around, leave the convoy alone, or we will ensure that you never harm anyone again. We have the technology and the will to back our words. This is your final warning. Terra's voice was calm, but the underlying threat was clear. The Zakar captain, once confident in their ability to overwhelm a civilian convoy, now found himself in an impossible position. His fleet was disabled, his pride shattered. He had heard the rumors about the Deathworlder hospital ships, but seeing it firsthand was a different matter entirely. A tense silence filled the air as the Zakar fleet remained immobilized. Then, slowly, the pirate ships began to retreat, their damaged hulls still sparking from the interference. Terra watched them go, her expression unreadable. "Ensign, take us to the convoy, ensure their safety," she ordered. "We'll provide medical aid, but no one is leaving this system until they've been fully checked for injuries." Hours later, the Phoenix's Requiem was docked with the civilian freighters. The survivors of the pirate raid were given the best care the ship could provide, their wounds mended by the advanced medical technology that only the Deathworlders could offer. Captain Tara Reynolds stood in the medical bay, watching as a small group of refugees were stabilized. Among them was an elderly Vashri woman, a species known for their short lifespans and frail constitutions. She had been badly injured during the pirate attack, but now, thanks to the medical expertise of the Phoenix's Requiem, she was recovering. "Thank you," the woman whispered, her voice shaky but filled with gratitude. "We never expected anyone to come for us, especially not after what the Zakar have done to our people." Tara smiled softly, though it was tinged with sadness. "It's what we do. We're here to save lives, no matter who you are or where you come from." One of the other refugees, a younger Thraxian male, approached her hesitantly. "Captain Reynolds," he said, his voice full of reverence, "I don't understand. How could you be so merciful? The Zakar are monsters. Why not destroy them?" Tara met his gaze, her expression firm yet empathetic. "Mercy doesn't mean weakness. We chose to disable them, not annihilate them, because that's the Deathworlder way. We fight for survival, yes, but we also fight for the future. We protect life, even when it's inconvenient or painful. We give people a chance to change, if they choose to, and if they don't." She paused, letting the unspoken threat linger. The Phoenix's Requiem wasn't just a hospital ship. It was a force of nature, a reminder to the galaxy that the Deathworlders were more than just survivors. They were the protectors, the healers, the ones who stood between darkness and the light of hope. And anyone who underestimated them again would learn, in the hardest way possible, that never meant never. The end. Never attack a Deathworlder hospital ship. HFY Sci-Fi Stories, Part 3. The Phoenix's Requiem had long been known as a vessel of mercy, but after the events in the Gorgoth system, its reputation took on a new dimension. Word spread like wildfire across the galaxy. The Deathworlders were not only capable of great compassion, they were a force to be reckoned with. It wasn't long before the Phoenix's Requiem found itself in the path of yet another challenge, one that would test the limits of its mission and its crew. Captain Tara Reynolds stood at the command console of the Phoenix's Requiem, staring out at the stars. The ship had just finished its latest round of humanitarian aid, and now it was on its way to a new system, a relatively peaceful one. Tara had hoped for a quiet period after the battle with the Zakar tribe, but peace was often fleeting in a galaxy as vast and unpredictable as theirs. "Captain," Ensign Daniels said, breaking her concentration, "we're picking up a distress signal. This one's different." Tara turned sharply. "What do you mean, different?" Daniels hesitated before responding, the unease clear in his voice. "It's not from a civilian ship. It's from a military vessel, a Pashthari dreadnought. They're requesting immediate medical assistance, Captain, but they're asking for it on the condition that we don't ask questions." The Pashthari were an ancient species, a proud, militaristic race known for their cunning tactics and impressive fleets. They had long held the title of one of the most fearsome factions in the galaxy, known for conquering planets and subjugating weaker species. The Deathworlders, however, had never aligned themselves with such militaristic powers. Still, it wasn't unheard of for enemies to request aid in dire circumstances, but such a request from the Pashthari was unsettling. Plot a course for the signal, Daniels, Tara ordered. We'll help, but we won't let them dictate the terms. As the Phoenix's Requiem approached the coordinates, the scene that greeted them was nothing short of surreal. The Pashthari dreadnought, the Vornith, was drifting in space, its once proud exterior battered and leaking plasma. It had clearly taken heavy damage, and the survivors on board were likely in desperate need of medical attention. "Captain, they're opening a channel," Ensign Daniels said, his voice tight with tension. Tara took a breath. She knew that this could be a trap, but she also knew that the Deathworlders couldn't turn away from suffering, regardless of the source. She gestured to Daniels to open the channel. The face that appeared on the screen was familiar, Commander Sarnak, one of the Pashthari's top officers. He was the last person Tara would have expected to see requesting help. "Captain Reynolds," Sarnak began, his voice tense, "we require immediate medical assistance. Our people are dying, and our systems are failing. You are the only ship in the sector with the capability to aid us. We ask for your help, and in return, we'll make no further contact. You have our word." Tara's eyes narrowed. It wasn't the words that caught her attention, but the tone in which they were spoken. There was no arrogance, no contempt for her species. There was something different about this plea, something that made her trust him less. "You'll get the help you need, Commander," she said, her voice calm. "But we will not ignore what's happened here. My medical team will board your ship, but we're coming to learn what caused this damage. We will not provide aid if we suspect foul play." Sarnak's gaze darkened. "I understand, Captain, but time is short." Moments later, the medical team aboard the Phoenix's Requiem was preparing to board the Vornith. Dr. Maley, the chief medical officer, led the team, her face set with determination. Tara had no doubt that Dr. Lee would get the job done. But this wasn't just about healing the wounded, it was about uncovering the truth behind the attack. The medical team boarded the Vornith, and the sight that greeted them was shocking. The ship's corridors were eerily silent, the air heavy with the smell of burnt circuitry and blood. Crew members lay slumped in their stations, clearly in various stages of death or unconsciousness. The damage wasn't just physical, it seemed almost surgical, as if someone had intentionally targeted critical systems to disable the ship from within. Dr. Lee quickly took charge, organizing the team to stabilize the wounded. But Tara's mind was elsewhere, as the Phoenix's Requiem's security team began to sweep the ship for any remaining threats. Tara couldn't shake the feeling that there was something far darker at play here. Back on the bridge, the tension was palpable. Ensign Daniels reported, "Captain, we've intercepted a transmission from the Vornith. It's encrypted, but the signal is coming from an unknown source. It's not from the Pashthari crew." Tara stood up sharply. "Who is it, then?" Daniels didn't answer immediately, instead running the signal through decryption protocols. When the message came through, it was a voice, distorted, unfamiliar. "Captain Reynolds, you have no idea what you're walking into," the voice said, its tone cold and detached. "We did not need your help, but now you've made a grave mistake. The Pashthari have become the playthings of forces beyond their control, forces you cannot understand. Turn back. Leave this system before it's too late." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving Tara with a deep sense of foreboding. On the Vornith, Commander Sarnak was still overseeing the treatment of his injured crew. Tara approached him cautiously, her eyes narrowing as she took in his exhausted form. "Commander, who was that on the transmission? What's happening here?" Sarnak hesitated, then met her gaze. "You were told the truth, our ship was attacked. But it was not by any enemy, you know. We were infiltrated by an unknown force, an entity that we had never encountered before. They have infected our ship, hijacked our systems, and now they control everything. We were trying to fight back, but they are too powerful." Tara's mind raced. "Infected? Hijacked? What are you talking about?" Sarnak's voice dropped to a whisper. "The Vornith has become a breeding ground for something worse than any war we've ever fought. Something that kills not with weapons, but with fear. It's inside our ship, Captain, and if you stay here much longer, it will be inside your ship, too." A wave of dread washed over Tara as she realized the truth of what was happening. The Pashthari weren't just victims, they were being controlled, manipulated by an unknown force that had somehow infiltrated their very vessel. And it wasn't done yet. Tara turned on her heel, her mind racing with the decision that lay ahead. Ensign Daniels, prepare for immediate departure. Dr. Lee, get your team back to the Phoenix's Requiem now. As the crew scrambled to execute the orders, Tara knew one thing for certain: no matter how merciful the Deathworlders tried to be, sometimes mercy meant knowing when to walk away. The Phoenix's Requiem wasn't just a hospital ship, it was a ship of survival, and that meant protecting its crew from whatever nightmare was creeping aboard. As the ship powered up its engines and prepared to leave the infected Vornith behind, Tara issued a final warning to the Pashtari commander. "We will not let this darkness follow us, Commander. If you want our help, you'll have to find your own way to escape it. We will not be your shield against this force. Do not mistake our mercy for weakness." With that, the Phoenix's Requiem turned away from the Vornith, leaving the Pashtari to face whatever horror had taken root inside their ship. But Tara knew this wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The end. Never attack a Deathworlder hospital ship. HFY Sci-Fi Stories, Part 4. The Phoenix's Requiem had barely escaped the Vornith when the full implications of their encounter began to set in. Captain Tara Reynolds and her crew were well aware that the Pashtari were not the only victims aboard that ship, and that the entity controlling them was something far more dangerous than any enemy they had ever faced. Days had passed since they'd left the Vornith behind, but the creeping sense of unease lingered in the air. Tara stood on the bridge of the Phoenix's Requiem, staring into the stars, her mind constantly returning to that encrypted message. "You have no idea what you're walking into," the voice had warned. That single phrase had haunted her. "Captain," Ensign Daniels interrupted her thoughts, his voice tight with apprehension. "We're receiving another distress signal. It's from a civilian colony near the edge of the Vornith's last known course. They've been reporting strange activity, power surges, communications failures, and sightings." Tara turned to face him, her jaw tightening. "Are they in immediate danger?" "Yes," Daniels replied. "The system's isolated, and no other ships are nearby. The colony's medical center is reporting that they've lost contact with the outer settlements. There's something off about the way they're describing it. They say it feels like they're being watched." "Send the coordinates," Tara said, her voice cold with resolve. "We're going in." The Phoenix's Requiem arrived at the colony, a peaceful settlement that had once been a hub for scientific research and agriculture. Its orbiting station was now a ghostly wreck, its power systems fluctuating wildly as if something was draining the very life from it. Tara's stomach churned as she looked at the station, the quiet menace of it sinking in. "We've picked up the distress signal," Ensign Daniels reported, but his voice wavered with something darker now. "It's coming from the surface. A research facility. Last known contact was from Dr. Maria Ashford, the lead scientist." "Patch us through," Tara ordered. "I want to know what's happening down there." The feed flickered to life, and the image of Dr. Ashford appeared. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with terror. "Captain Reynolds, thank the stars you've come," she gasped, nearly out of breath. We don't know what's happening. The creatures, they've breached the facility. They're everywhere." They were just whispers at first, in the shadows, but now they're real. "You have to help us." "Stay calm, Dr. Ashford," Tara said, trying to steady the scientist's nerves. "We're coming down to assist. Can you hold your position until we arrive?" "No, Dr. Ashford's voice trembled. "They know we're here. It's too late. You don't understand. Whatever was on that ship, it's spreading. We've been exposed to something we didn't know until it was too late. It's not just us, it's..." The transmission cut out suddenly. "Get us to that facility," Tara ordered sharply, her instincts on high alert. The unknown force from the Vornith had followed them here. It was clear now that whatever had infiltrated the Pashtari ship had spread far beyond their reach. As the Phoenix's Requiem descended through the atmosphere and touched down at the research facility, the scene was even worse than Tara had feared. The exterior of the building was abandoned, windows shattered, and scorch marks marred the walls. The haunting silence seemed to stretch for miles. "Security teams, prepare for breach," Tara ordered, grabbing her sidearm. "Dr. Lee, I want you to stay with the medical team. We don't know what we're dealing with here." Dr. Maylee nodded, her usual calm now overtaken by the gravity of the situation. "Understood, Captain. We'll secure the medical bays and treat the injured. But be careful. This doesn't feel right." Tara led the team inside, moving swiftly through the darkened corridors of the facility. They passed overturned equipment, shattered glass, and blood-stained floors, signs of a desperate struggle. Whatever had attacked here wasn't just any weapon. It was something far more insidious, a force that left no trace of its presence except for the terror it spread. In the distance, Tara could hear soft whispers, voices, almost like a melody, drifting down the hall. The hairs on the back of her neck stood up. "Stay sharp," Tara muttered under her breath, signaling for her team to move forward, weapons free. As they advanced deeper into the facility, they reached the central lab. The door was partially ajar, and inside, Dr. Ashford was slumped on the floor, staring blankly at the ceiling. The walls were covered in strange symbols, alien markings that seemed to pulse with an unnatural energy. The air was thick with static, as though the building itself was alive. Tara knelt beside Dr. Ashford. "Doctor, are you?" The scientist's eyes snapped open, her pupils dilated. "No, don't come any closer. You don't know what you're dealing with." Her voice was a hoarse whisper, filled with terror. "They're inside, all of us. They'll take you too." Before Tara could react, Dr. Ashford suddenly convulsed, her body jerking violently as if something inside her was fighting to break free. The sounds of scraping metal echoed through the lab as the walls seemed to shift. "Get back," Tara shouted, pulling the scientist away from the floor. "Get everyone out of here, now." But it was too late. From the shadows, the creatures emerged, shapeless, distorted figures that flickered in and out of reality like mirages. They weren't just alien, they were something other, something that defied logic, defied understanding. The creatures lunged forward, and Tara's team opened fire. But their weapons had no effect. The creatures passed right through the beams, their forms distorting as they absorbed the energy. The atmosphere in the room became thick with dread, the whispers growing louder until it felt like the very walls were closing in. Tara's mind raced. This wasn't just an alien force, it was a parasite, an entity that could infest and possess the minds and bodies of any living thing it came into contact with. It had somehow attached itself to the Pashthari, and now, it had come here, and if they didn't stop it now, it would spread through the galaxy like wildfire. "Dr. Lee," Tara shouted into her calms. "Prepare the Phoenix's requiem for immediate evacuation. Get every person out of here." "Understood." Dr. Lee's voice crackled back. "But Captain, there's something else. These creatures, they're not of this universe. They're from beyond. They're consuming everything in their path. I think." A loud crash interrupted her. Tara spun to see one of the creatures lunging toward her. She reacted without thinking, pulling a grenade from her belt and hurling it toward the creature. The explosion sent it tumbling backward, its form destabilizing, flickering out of existence for a moment. But it wasn't enough. More creatures were appearing. "Everyone out," Tara commanded, pulling her team back toward the exit. They retreated as the facility began to shake, the walls distorting like they were alive, the creatures swarming from every corner. The colony had been infected, and the Phoenix's requiem was their only hope. As the last of the survivors boarded the Phoenix's requiem, Tara ordered the engines to power up. The ship's systems hummed to life, but the weight of the situation was heavier than ever. "We've only delayed it," Tara said quietly to Dr. Lee as they watched the research facility burn behind them. "This thing, whatever it is, it won't stop until it's consumed everything." Dr. Lee nodded grimly. "And it's following us." Tara's hand clenched around the console. "Then we make sure it never follows again." "Prepare for battle, Captain?" Daniels asked. "No," Tara said, her voice cold with resolve. "Prepare for the unknown." Never attack a Deathworlder hospital ship. HFY Stories, Part 5. The Phoenix's requiem had left the cursed colony behind, but the strange, unknowable force that had stalked them from the research facility wasn't easily shaken. Captain Tara Reynolds and her crew now found themselves in a race against time, and the odds were growing increasingly insurmountable. The Phoenix's requiem was not designed for war, but it would have to become that ship if they were going to survive this new threat. Tara stood on the bridge, her mind occupied by the encrypted messages they had been intercepting from across the galaxy. The creatures, or whatever they were spreading quickly. Colonies, military ships, even entire fleets were falling silent, their communications ceasing without warning. Entire systems were succumbing to this mysterious entity that was rapidly growing stronger. Captain, Ensign Daniels spoke, his voice more strained than usual. We're picking up another distress signal. Same signature as before. It's coming from the Kaldrith system. I don't think we have much time before it reaches there. Tara's hands tightened on the console. Kaldrith was a critical mining colony, one that was heavily fortified. The system housed materials vital to the galactic economy. If the creatures reached it, we don't have time to waste, Tara said, her voice cold. Set course for the Kaldrith system. Full speed ahead. As the Phoenix's Requiem sped toward the Kaldrith system, Tara convened an emergency briefing. Dr. Lee, Ensign Daniels, and the rest of the senior staff filled the briefing room. We need to be prepared for anything, Tara began, her eyes scanning the faces of her crew. What we're facing is beyond anything we've encountered. It's not just an alien force. It's a force of nature, something that feeds on fear, on control. If we're going to stop it, we need to understand it. Dr. Lee spoke up. Captain, we've already seen that our weapons are ineffective. They're like ghosts, passing through our energy beams, our shields, like they're bending reality itself. It's like they're not even part of our universe. So we fight them with what we have, Tara said firmly. We'll use the Phoenix's Requiem's advanced technology. It might not be enough to kill them, but it might be enough to keep them at bay long enough for us to learn more. We need data, and we need to know how to fight back. Ensign Daniels added. We've been tracking their movement. They seem to have some kind of tethering mechanism. When we cut the energy signatures, they temporarily stop moving toward us. It's like they're following a trail or path. Tara's mind clicked into place. A trail. What if they're using some kind of gravitational or electromagnetic signal? We can use that to lure them into a trap or at least keep them off us long enough to analyze their behavior. But how do we keep them from attacking the colony? Dr. Lee asked. If we fail, the Kaldrith system could be next. Tara's gaze hardened. We don't fail. The Phoenix's Requiem entered the Kaldrith system under a cover of silence. The system was eerily quiet. No transmissions. No emergency distress calls. The vast mining station, usually bustling with activity, was dark, its lights barely flickering as the ship's sensors swept the area. Tara could feel the tension on the bridge, every crew member aware of what was at stake. Captain, Ensign Daniels reported. We've picked up the creatures. They're on the mining station. They're in the station's core, and they're drawing energy from it. Prepare the medpods and deploy shield drones, Tara ordered. We can't let them get to the civilians in there. Dr. Lee, get to the medical bay. We need to be ready for anyone who survives. Dr. Lee's face was pale, but her voice was steady. Understood, Captain. Ensign Daniels, Tara said. I want us to create an electromagnetic pulse in the station's lower levels. We need to disrupt their signal and draw them away from the civilians. I'll start the calculations, Captain, Daniels replied. The crew worked quickly, making preparations for the pulse. Tara could hear the faint hum of the ship's systems running at full capacity. She knew the plan was risky. If the creatures were anything like the ones aboard the Vornith, then any interference could provoke them, but they didn't have time for hesitation. Moments later, the Phoenix's Requiem hovered just outside the mining station's perimeter, shields braced, and energy systems focused. Tara's heart pounded in her chest as she gave the order to deploy the electromagnetic pulse. The ship's systems hummed as a pulse of energy shot toward the station's lower levels, disrupting the magnetic fields and electromagnetic signals. The station's power flickered for a moment as if the entire system had been stunned. And then, from the depths of the station, a shrieking wail echoed through the communication channels. The creatures are reacting to the pulse, Ensign Daniels shouted. They've left their hiding spots, coming toward us. Tara's grip tightened on her chair. Keep the pulse going, don't let up. We need to get them away from the civilians. The creatures appeared on the monitors, flickering like shadows in the low light of the station. Their forms were no longer as elusive, no longer just whispers in the dark. They were here, in full, horrifying reality. But Tara wasn't backing down. Ensign Daniels, take us in. We're going to bring those creatures to the surface. Use the pulse to draw them out of the station. Make them follow us. The Phoenix's Requiem began to move, its sleek frame cutting through the void toward the station's surface, where the creatures began to swarm toward it. Tara's mind raced. They had to lead them out into the open, into space, where the creatures could no longer hide within the station's confines. As they neared the surface, the pulse was at full power, pushing the creatures toward the open airlock. Tara watched the monitors with a steely resolve. She wasn't sure how much longer they could keep this up, but they had no choice. In the midst of the chaos, Dr. Lee's voice came over the comms. "Captain, the medical teams are ready. The survivors have been gathered, but there are more injuries than we anticipated. We need to get them out of here." "We're almost there, Dr. Lee," Tara said, not taking her eyes off the battle playing out on the station's surface. "Just hold on." With one final push, Tara gave the order. "Open the airlock, now." The Phoenix's Requiem's airlock doors slid open, and with it, the creatures surged toward the void of space. The electromagnetic pulse flooded the area, cutting off their energy source, forcing the creatures to detach from the station and move into the open. One by one, the creatures flickered and distorted as they were sucked into the vacuum of space, their forms destabilizing with each second. But just as Tara thought they were done, a massive surge of energy erupted from the station. One final creature, the largest of them all, emerged, its form more solid than the others. It roared, a sound that was more like a scream of fury than anything organic. "We've got a problem," Ensign Daniels warned. "It's charging toward us. Whatever this thing is, it's not leaving without a fight." Tara's eyes narrowed. "Then we fight back." The Phoenix's Requiem engaged its remaining defense systems. Energy shields flared as the massive creature collided with the ship, shaking it violently. Tara gripped the console with both hands, her voice steady but commanding. "Full power to shields. Weapons hot. We're not letting it get close enough to board." The ship's pulse weapons fired, lighting up the void of space with brilliant bursts of energy. The creature staggered under the assault, flickering violently, trying to resist the energy that was tearing at it. For a moment, it seemed to falter, its form destabilizing again, but it wasn't done yet. Never attack a Deathworlder hospital ship. HFY Sci-Fi Stories, Part 6. The Phoenix's Requiem hung in the cold void of space, its hull scarred from the battle that had just unfolded on the surface of the Kaldrith mining station. Tara Reynolds stood on the bridge, her gaze fixed on the quiet expanse before them. They had won, for now, but the cost was high. The creature they had fought, the one that had nearly torn their ship apart, was only one among many. The threat wasn't over, it was evolving. "Captain," Ensign Daniels' voice broke through her thoughts. "We've received another transmission. It's from the Galactic Council. They've heard about what happened here." Tara didn't need to ask what they wanted. The Council, composed of the galaxy's most powerful factions, had a knack for showing up when things went wrong, and with the events unfolding across the galaxy, their interest was likely more about containment than actual help. "Put it through, Daniels," Tara ordered. The screen flickered, and a familiar face appeared, Counselor Athon, a diplomat from one of the more neutral species in the galaxy. His face was somber, but his eyes held an edge of urgency. "Captain Reynolds," Athon began, "the situation has escalated faster than we anticipated. We've received reports from several sectors now. The creatures you encountered, those things, are spreading exponentially. The Council is convening an emergency session, but we need more information. We need to know what we're dealing with." Tara's jaw tightened. "We don't have all the answers yet, but we know this much. These creatures aren't just an invasion force. They're a plague. A force that can bend space and time, feed off energy, and corrupt everything they touch. And they are spreading fast." Athon's expression shifted slightly, his calm demeanor faltering. "The Phoenix's Requiem is humanity's most advanced ship. You faced them and survived. Captain, the Council is asking you to." "To what?" Tara cut him off. "Frustration building. You want me to become your weapon, your shield while you figure out what to do. I didn't sign up for this to be your front line in some intergalactic war. My mission is to save lives, not fight an unknowable enemy on behalf of bureaucrats." Athon held up his hands in a placating gesture. "I understand your frustration, Captain, but you have to realize, this threat could wipe out entire sectors. The Council will offer support, but we need intelligence, detailed intelligence. We need to understand how to fight back." Tara paused, her anger subsiding just a fraction. She could see the gravity of the situation in Athon's eyes. We don't have time for the council to play politics. This enemy is real. They consume entire worlds' systems, and the more time we waste, the stronger they get. I need resources, not more orders. Athon's expression grew more serious. We'll provide you with the necessary resources, ships, reinforcements, medical support, but you'll need to share your findings with us. That's the agreement. You won't be alone in this fight. Tara leaned forward, her voice low. Then get moving. The sooner we can find a way to stop them, the sooner we stop losing everything. The transmission cut off, leaving a hollow silence in its wake. Tara turned back to the viewports, her mind racing. The Phoenix's Requiem was not a warship. It was designed to save lives, not wage battles on a galactic scale, but they were about to be thrust into one whether they were ready or not. Captain, Daniels said after a moment, his voice uneasy. The medical team has reported more survivors from the station. They're on board and being treated, but they're showing signs of exposure. Tara's stomach churned. Exposure to the creatures was more than just physical injury. It was a kind of infection, a corruption of mind and body. The survivors would be vulnerable, and there was no telling what effect prolonged exposure might have. Get Dr. Lee to them immediately, Tara ordered. We can't risk letting this spread among the crew. Below decks, Dr. Meili and her team were working quickly to stabilize the survivors, but the symptoms were already evident. The infected were twitching uncontrollably, their eyes wide and vacant. It was as though the creatures were still inside them, burrowing beneath the surface. Dr. Lee moved swiftly between patients, offering quick diagnostics, trying to prevent the worst. Captain, she said, looking up with a grave expression, I'm afraid we may be dealing with something worse than we realized. This infection is like a parasite, but it's much more than that. It's altering their biology on a fundamental level. Tara frowned, crossing her arms. You mean it's changing them? Yes, Dr. Lee confirmed. Their bodies are fighting it. But this parasite doesn't just take over, it rewires them. I'm seeing mutations in their cells. The human body can't handle it. And if we don't act quickly, we could lose them. Then we need a cure, Tara said firmly. Find one, Dr. Lee. I don't care what it takes. I'll try, Captain, but I don't know if this is something we can cure. The creatures have some kind of Dr. Lee's voice trailed off as she watched one of the survivors convulse violently. Before she could act, the survivor's eyes snapped open, and a chilling, distorted voice came from their mouth. You can't stop it. Tara's heart skipped a beat. She stepped forward, her hand instinctively reaching for her sidearm. The survivor's body jerked, and in a horrifying display, they began to twist and contort unnaturally, their form becoming increasingly alien as something other began to emerge. The infection was no longer just an illness, it was a transformation, a horrifying symbiosis between the victim and the parasite. You will all be consumed, the survivor whispered, their voice warped and unrecognizable. There is no escape. Before Tara could react, Dr. Lee injected the patient with a tranquilizer, but it barely slowed the transformation. The creature was still fighting for control, its physical body spasming as it tried to burst free. This is worse than we feared, Dr. Lee said, her voice shaking. Tara's eyes were hard as stone. We need to contain them, now. Seal this deck off and move all infected personnel into isolation. We can't let it spread. Back on the bridge, Tara gathered her crew for a new strategy meeting. This was no longer about just saving lives. This was about survival, and stopping the creatures before they overtook the ship. Captain, Ensign Daniels reported. The Pashthari have made contact again. They've mobilized part of their fleet to assist, but they're cautious. They're offering help on the condition that they join us on the front lines. Tara's lips pressed into a thin line. I didn't ask for their help, but if they're serious, then I'll take what I can get. Captain, Ensign Daniels continued. We've also detected an anomaly near the Valerii system. It's fluctuating, almost like a rift in space-time. If it's related to the creatures, it could be a source we haven't considered. Tara's eyes narrowed. A rift? We should investigate it, Daniels suggested. It could be how the creatures are spreading so fast. If we can trace it, we might be able to stop them at the source. Tara considered it for a long moment. Plot a course for the Valerii system. If there's a way to stop this, we'll find it. But we can't afford any mistakes. Not now. The Phoenix's requiem jumped to the Valeri's system, its engines humming with purpose. The anomaly loomed ahead, an unnatural distortion in the fabric of space itself. Terra's crew stood on edge, ready for whatever might await them. "Prepare for anything," Terra said, her voice steady. "This could be our only chance to stop these creatures for good."